today we're going to go a bit out of order. I'll do my first 5 after the upcoming interview. We're going to start our show today with an interview. We have a gentleman joining us by phone in just a moment, Russ Vought, V-O-U-G-H-T, Vought. He is the president and founder of a new organization in Washington, Center for American Restoration. And I have to tell you, all you listeners who email me and put messages up on all sorts of social media saying, tell us what to do, tell us something we can do, this is what Russ Vought is going to do. He's giving people who love this country, who love the constitutional structure of our country, the guarantee of liberty, the very America of our founding, giving us a path forward at this time when so many people in America are concerned about what we do to save, to hold on to America. So Russ Vought, very quickly, he worked in the Trump White House. He joined the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. When President Trump took office, he served as the director of the OMB for nearly 2 years, first acting and then finally confirmed by the Senate. We can go to a story on that point, but we'll leave that confirmation process alone. He was a member of the president's cabinet, responsible for overseeing the implementation of the president's policy, management, and deregulatory agendas across the executive branch. Prior to that, Russ worked in Washington, D.C., with a variety of grassroots and public policy organizations, worked for 7 years, and this is where I met him. He was vice president of Heritage Action for America. So a true patriot, great thinker, has left the Trump White House, and now is the founder and president of a group that he's going to tell us all about, Center for American Restoration. So without further ado, hi, Russ.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for having me on your show.
So glad you could join me today. And I have to tell you, I was telling you before we came on air, I have so many people who write notes or comments saying, you know, I understand all these things are going wrong. What do we do? Give us something to do. How do we, give us hope, give us a path to do something. So you had, by the way, for our listeners, I want to direct your attention, before we dive into it, direct your attention to a great piece written by Russ Vought, and it appeared on the American Federalist, thefederalist.com. It's called How to Lead the United States into an American Spring, and it's about this organization. And on our website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage, under shows, drop-down list of links, we've linked this article. I urge you to read it, give you a much fuller description of the organization Russ has founded. But without further ado, I'm going to start, Russ, by asking you, tell our listeners, please, what this new organization, Center for American Restoration, is all about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie. One of the things that we want to do, given that we are so divided as a country right now, we're so split, and it's to restore a political consensus in this country that we are a nation that is under God, that we have unique interests as a country that flow from our people, our institutions, and our history, and that our individual freedoms are enjoyed in the context of healthy communities and just laws. We boil that down to say for God, for country, and for community, and we believe that that is a banner for what we have been fighting for these last 4 years and really 4 to 6 years of the America First agenda. Unfortunately, we don't want to go back to the way it was, where the establishment and others in D.C., the Beltway, got to set the agenda based on things that were not necessarily front and center on the minds of the American people. We believe that people's families, their communities, the health of their local areas, their school districts, their ability to participate in the economic revitalization that needs to occur in this country once again, unfortunately. These are the things that are front and center in people's minds, and we want to be able to have a center that's thinking through it, providing from an activist standpoint, an opportunity to participate in the political process now. Now is the time where we save our country. If we wait too long, we won't have a country anymore. And so, but at the same time, we also want to engage in the area of ideas and convince people, convince our neighbors, convince people in our kids' schools to be able to articulate why they have a different worldview that leads them to believe things that is fundamentally contrary to ours. We have a belief that there is a permanent majority coalition of people out there that will sign up for God, for country, and for community if they have the right arguments and the right policies. And I honestly think, Debbie, you've been out there on this in this particular radio show along those same lines of trying to bring the people together and encouraging the kind of dialogue that will allow us to be able to move forward. So, this is both short term and it's long term. We've got a Biden administration that's putting policies in place and unraveling Trump policies that were confronting, but we also want to build for the long term to be able to convince and restore a consensus in this country about what has made America great.
I love that, and I'm going to say the article I mentioned to my listeners that, again, is called How to Lead the United States into an American Spring. Even the very beginning, this is an article by you in the Federalist, even the very beginning of it was really, it caught my attention because what you're acknowledging is, without talking about President Trump's particular presidency and agenda, we saw just a spark, a freshness in the American public's thought about what America means, the importance of America, the uniqueness of America, the role of the citizens to be active as a sovereign in America. You talked about in the very beginning of your article, the establishment wants to move beyond Trump and return to business as usual, where powerful interests have an outsized voice in setting the agenda, et cetera. And then you also talk about even the center-right movement in the Beltway and the commentariat, I love that word, commentariat, is ready to revert to their pre-Trump agenda, robotically extending America's interest to the outskirts of the globe, tinkering at the margins of an ever-expanding welfare state. I mean, you're a very good writer, by the way, but you captured so many things that are going on in people's minds as we saw this just refreshing new renewal of love of America. And even if you don't want to call it the Trump agenda, because it's beyond Trump, it's just the America agenda. So you're really talking about not letting the forces of reverting to how things were before the Trump presidency, not letting those take hold, but instead extending and renewing and uplifting the ideas that have become common and become popular under the Trump agenda. Is that accurate summary?
That is entirely accurate. You really nailed what we're trying to do, and we want to make sure that first of all, there's a voice in Washington D.C. for men and women across the country that have these viewpoints, and in our sense is that there needed to be an organization to be able to provide a home and institutionalize these are really important to institutionalize the work that's been done in these ideas and give them a home over the long time. And our hope is that we have many allies in this space, and we're hard at work with others to do this. But I've sensed it ever since it was clear the president was not going to be in office for another 4 years, Debbie, in the sense of some in the center right movement just almost breathing a sigh of relief in terms of now we can start talking about staying in Afghanistan, or now we can go back to talking about market absolutism or spending cuts. And again, I support spending cuts. It's me, and I put it in my article. But I also think that we've got to think it through, not necessarily for what our ideology is, but what is front and center right now for the American people. And I believe that is people across the country are worried. They're worried that they're going to be canceled. They're worried about their ability to participate in the political sphere because of getting big tech, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter pulling down their ability to participate. So those are the things that we've got election security, getting more voter integrity laws on the books. All of these things are vital, and that doesn't mean we don't get to the things that I'm obviously very passionate about, limiting the size and the scope of the federal government. But I also think we got to think through where is the fight right now, respond to that fight, and be able to ensure that we are bringing a conservative and American dialogue to those important issues where the left has decided that they're going to push us right now, here now.
Okay, Russ, I have to tell you, I don't know if what I'm about to say is going to be viewed as a compliment or a criticism, but I have to tell you, the Washington Post, never the friend of conservatives, Washington Post had a caption, an opinion piece, Russ Vought could help give conservative populism the intellectual heft it needs. And I love the title. And I was going to say, that was my same sense of it when I was first hearing from you all about what you were doing, that there is an America First agenda, or a restoration of America, that it brought millions of people into the voting booth for the first time in many years in 2016. It brought activism. It built the Trump rallies. But the idea of building this, I thought was a great caption, intellectual heft, giving kind of meat and potatoes and depth and substance and a means of going forward to further this kind of American renewal populist agenda. So I don't know if you knew you were the subject of praise by the Washington Post, but it was a great point about what you were doing.
No, it was a great article. I mean, I think one of the things that I've realized over the last 4 years is the president came along and tapped into something that was out there in the American consciousness, that was on voters' minds. But in some respects, it was a countercultural to longstanding ways that we had previously defined conservatism. And when that ever happens, that can create a lot of tension. And what is needed is to be able to go back to first principles and to work through those policies and agenda and put them squarely in the historical mainstream of conservatism, which I believe that there is a place for these policies and this agenda. And then to think, so that's what you do to square away the intellectual moorings. But then you've got to go forward and to think through from a policy agenda, what is needed to be able to accomplish your goals and to put those into laws and then to execute them in the federal government. And coming from the president's cabinet, we had to do a lot of this within government, and that's never ideal. So I want us to be thinking through, what is the next administration that shares these viewpoints? Do they have operational ready-made plans from day one to execute, so then when a president's trying to end an endless war in Afghanistan, he doesn't have to wait for 3 years to be able to come up with something. When he's trying to deal with a caravan coming along the border that's leading to human trafficking, we don't have to pull together 4 different policies that we made work. Unfortunately, Biden's tearing down those policies today. But that work needs to be done in organizations and infrastructure that we're trying to build at the Center for American Restoration.
I love that. I will tell our listeners, first of all, to go and learn more about this. The website is AmericanRestorationCenter.com, AmericanRestorationCenter.com. We're talking to Russ Vought, who is the president and founder of this Center for American Restoration, which you also mentioned in your article and a moment ago, that in addition to the center that's going to translate these profoundly important ideas into practical policies, ready-made, ready for the next administration who could put them into place, you're also going to have an activist organization, American Restoration Action, a C4. So I know it's not up and running yet, but is that a way that people could get involved in supporting you once that's up and running, is to find out through this American Restoration Action what they can do to help? Is that the idea of that?
That's the idea. And what our hope is there is that activists will be able to contribute in any way that they are able to, from the standpoint of grassroots activity and building relationships with their member of Congress and making sure that their member of Congress has both the support and the mainline connection to the grassroots to be able to know what is on your hearts, your minds, and to be able to get involved in the political process. And I have some experience in helping build grassroots networks, and we're looking forward to being able to put what we've learned to build these kind of relationships directly with activists and with the members of Congress themselves, to be able to make sure that these fights are occurring in Congress, and to make sure that when members of Congress take the field, that they feel the support and they're prepared and to be able to move forward and be true champions on these issues.
Okay, I would mention, when I did your introduction, Russ, I meant to say to our listeners, I want to say it now. Someone of Russ Vaught's history in Washington, years of experience working in grassroots organizations, actual experience in the White House, on the cabinet, President Trump's cabinet, and heading up Office of Management and Budget. it's almost impossible to overstate to you, my listeners, how important this is for a sense of clarity and purpose and movement, taking the populist ideas or the pro-America ideas that President Trump articulated and were so popular, and translating them and giving them a way to move forward into future policy. Russ has the word intellectual always sounds very left-wing, so I hate to say the word, but you have a very strong intellectual reputation in Washington among serious conservative thinkers, serious leaders. There's just a great deal of excitement among genuine, well-informed activists in Washington that to have a new organization headed up by Russ Vought heading down this path, it's just great news. So it's a great news thing you've done. And again, I'll tell our listeners to go. They can actually follow you. I think we have for Twitter at Russ, RUSS _ Vought, VOUGHT. We have AmericanRestorationCenter.com. This information is also on our website. And Russ, I thank you so much for being available to join me today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Debbie. Really, really appreciate it.
Great talking to you, sir. Okay, I'm honoring our time. We said our time's up. Okay, so friends, I really am not understating when I tell you that people that I've known for years in Washington who are very serious, very earnest, very deep thinkers are so excited about this. And again, the quick thing of taking the Trump passion for America, goodness of America, love of the American ideals and founding ideals, and giving them a place, a home in Washington to move forward with, and then developing policies that will be available for people in Congress and the Senate and the future president to carry them forth, that carry forth these ideas, and to give activists a place to be active. The C4 isn't quite rolling yet, but it will be. And so I urge you, if you're interested in being more active, you don't have to live in the Washington, D.C. area. You can be right at home wherever you are, and they'll have something for you, the lovers of American liberty, to do through this organization. So glad Russ could join me today.